Just for the record, Dasya Prema, who is supposed to be in class today, is traveling because of the CSA delivery. So even though I asked several other candidates, none of them was available. So you're stuck with me.
Krishna,
Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Good morning, Prabhus, Vaishnavas, Vaishnavis, devotees, sympathizers, casual listeners, everyone. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 31, verse number 20. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Naranam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Dirayat Nasta Prayasavadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamas Loke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. So reading the translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada, the verse goes like this. Apahata sakai sakalai shanat malatmani avidatam hedita bhavano pahuta nija jana vasagatvam atmanuyan na sarati chidravad akshara satam hi. Synonyms. Apahata, vanquished. Sakala, all. Eshana, desires. Amala, spotless. Just like the Bhagavatam is called the Amala Purana, spotless Purana. Atmani, to the mind. Aviratam, constantly. Edhita, increasing. Bhavana, with feeling. Upahuta, being called. Nija Jana, of his devotees. Vasha, under the control. Gatvam, going. Atmana, his. Ayan, knowing. Na, never. Sarati, goes away. Chidravat, like the sky. Akshara, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Satam, of the devotees. He, certainly. And now the translation and purport of Srila Prabhupada. Being completely cleansed of all material desires, the devotees are freed from all mental contamination. Thus, they can always think of the Lord constantly and address him very feelingly. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, knowing himself to be controlled by his devotees, does not leave them for a second, just as the sky overhead never becomes invisible. Purport. It is clear from the previous verse that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Janardhan, is very quickly satisfied by the activities of his devotees. The pure devotee is always absorbed in the thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As stated, Srimvatam Swakata Krishna. By always thinking of Krishna, the pure devotee's heart is freed from all kinds of desires. In the material world, the heart of a living entity is filled with material desires. When the living entity is cleansed, he does not think of anything material. As the mind is completely cleansed, one attains a perfectional stage of mystic yoga. For then the yogi always sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead within his heart. Dhyanavasthita tadgathena manasa pashanti yam yogina. As soon as the Lord is seated within the heart of a devotee, the devotee cannot be contaminated by the material modes of nature. As long as one is under the control of the material modes, he desires so many things and makes so many plans for material sense enjoyment. But as soon as the Lord is perceived in the heart, all material desires vanish. When the mind is completely free from material desire, the devotee can think of the Lord constantly. In this way, he becomes completely dependent upon the lotus feet of the Lord. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu prays, Ajinanda tanuja kinkaram patitam bambishame babambudo kripaya tava pada pankaja stitaduli sadrisham vichintaya. My dear Lord, I'm your eternal servant, but somehow or other, I have fallen into the ocean of this material world. Kindly pick me up and fix me as a speck of dust at your lotus feet. This is the 5th verse of HG Sarvatma Dasa. Similarly, Srila Narottam Das Thakur prays, Haha Prabhu Nanda Sutta Vrishavanu Sutta Yuta Karuna Karo Hai Baro Narottama Dasa Koi Natelia Ranga Pai Tumavina Kiya Amaro. My dear Lord, you're now present with the daughter of King Vrishavanu, Srimati Radharani. Now both of you, please be merciful upon me. Don't kick me away, because I have no shelter other than you. In this way, the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes dependent on his devotee. The Lord is invincible, yet he is conquered by his pure devotee. He enjoys being dependent on his devotee, just as Krishna enjoyed being dependent on the mercy of Mother Yashoda. Thinking himself dependent on the devotee gives the Supreme Lord great enjoyment. Sometimes a king may engage a joker, and in the process of joking, the king is sometimes insulted. The king, however, enjoys these activities. Everyone worships the Supreme Lord with great reverence. Therefore, the Lord sometimes wants to enjoy the chastisement of his devotees. In this way, the relationship eternally existing between the Lord and his devotees is fixed, just like the sky overhead. Verse again. Being completely cleansed of all material desires, the devotees are freed from all mental contamination. Thus, they can always think of the Lord constantly and address him very feelingly. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, knowing himself to be controlled by his devotees, does not leave them for a second, just as the sky overhead never becomes invisible. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chaksurumilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Va Chalam Pangum Langayati Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurundya Taranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanyam Ishvaram. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhu vyayavacha patitanam pavanivyo vaishnavivyo namo namaha. There is a caveat here, and is the first sentence: being completely cleansed of all material desires. Then the verse begins: the devotees are freed from all mental contamination. Thus, they can always think of the Lord constantly and address him very feelingly. So how is it possible that one finally gets cleansed from all material desires? Material desires are practically like air. They're everywhere, and it seems like one needs air to survive. So in the same way, that's why the Buddhist nihilists in general, they concluded that desire is the cause of sin, and they try to cut themselves off from desire. But matter of fact, desire is eternal because we're individuals. So we do have desires eternally. The trick, I don't know what word to use, is to purify our desires and make them the desire of Krishna, just like we are trying to see the world through Krishna's eyes. And similarly, Krishna is trying to see the world through the devotee's eyes, because there is, in spite of Krishna having everything and being everything, there is one thing that he didn't have before the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which is the love to love himself as a devotee. So this is a very rare occurrence. So Krishna is very partial, even though we know he says he's impartial, he's equal to everyone. He still has a penchant for relationships with these devotees. And therefore, one, in order to enjoy or participate of these exchanges, has to be free of material contamination. The first step is to understand that we are not matter. We do matter, but we are not made out of matter. Therefore, the contact with matter is illusory, is a dream. The dream may be very fulfilling in a certain way, as if you have a dream where you're, I don't know, jet skiing in Bimini or parachuting in Hawaii or whatever gives adrenaline to a particular body and enjoyment, and having fame and recognition and accolades and all these things that are simply illusory and contamination, if nothing else. When we actually realize that it was a dream, it's over. It's as simple as that. You can't go back. Sometimes we have such a great dream that we want to continue. Even if it is a spiritual dream, you're dreaming that, dreaming of Prabhupada, and you wake up and then you want to go back. You want to be with Prabhupada again, but you can't. You can't. So that's the nature of our, or in general, that's the nature of material life. That is a one time only. You can't replay it. You missed it, you missed it. And there is nothing to it. There is no substance. Because at the end, you have to just, basically, they kick you out of the theater. It's just like if you go watch a concert, you pay for the ticket, you watch the concert, and at the end of a concert, you can't just sit in the stadium and wait for the next band to appear the next day or a week later. You're done. They have to clean up, and your ticket is no longer valid. You gotta go. So in this material world, we get a particular body, which is exactly suited to our needs and desires, because we manufacture, we had a special order, and now you're stuck with it. And at the end of it, when you thought everything was going so well, you're kicked out unceremoniously. Just say goodbye, shake hands, because you're never going to see that body again. And you thought you were that body. So that is a problem. This is the main problem, the misidentification. Because as long as you identify with the body, you cannot identify with the soul, and you cannot develop love for Krishna, which is an inherent capacity that the soul has to love Krishna. So within this body, we just love whatever is attached to the body, and whatever we acquire for the body, whatever we concoct with our material mind, with our impure senses. So until we give up this misidentification, there is no love. Love won't spring out of our hearts, because we're going to be distracted by material desires. And as soon as one gives up the identification and the contamination that occurs by associating with the material objects, whether it be gross or subtle, then love for Krishna can manifest. And one becomes the property of Krishna. And what's most astonishing, Krishna becomes one's property. There is a few points on the purport that I would like to mention. And the second part of the verse says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, knowing himself to be controlled by his devotees, does not leave him for a second, just as the sky overhead never becomes invisible. By always thinking of Krishna, I'm going to just mention some of the points here. The pure devotee's heart is freed from all kinds of desires. So this is the exercise. We have a diet and we have an exercise. The exercise is by always thinking of Krishna. The pure devotee's heart is freed from all kinds of desires. Seems like insurmountable. And why is that? Because we have been accumulating desires since time immemorial. Since we got this body, and the desires started flooding in. In the material world, the heart of a living entity is filled with material desires. When the living entity is cleansed, he does not think of anything material. As the mind is completely cleansed, one attains a perfectional stage of mystic yoga, for the yogi always sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead within his heart. As soon as the Lord is seated within the heart of the devotee cannot be contaminated by the modes of material nature. So the Lord is standing room only in our hearts, because it's completely contaminated. Just like if you invite your friends or parents to your home and the furniture is dirty and there's stuff piled up on it. It's like dirty dishes with food, it's stale, and it's a horrible situation. You cannot invite anybody to sit on the furniture. So why would Krishna sit within our heart if the heart is a dirty place? It's completely contaminated. So as soon as the heart is cleansed, then Krishna will sit within the heart, and all material desires will fly like birds in Piazza di San Marco in Venice. If you clap your hands, there's so many pigeons there. They fly away. Not for long, but they will fly away. And in the case of the devotees, as soon as Krishna sits within the heart, all material desires will go away. So what happens? to all these material desires? Do they just float around and come back? No, because one is transcending the material world. Therefore, these desires don't come back. So what happened when one leaves the body and goes back to the spiritual world, occupies his or her original position as a servant of Krishna in direct association of Krishna and his devotees? Do you remember incidents about your life, even devotional incidents that took place? I don't know, but who really cares? If you're Krishna, why would you bother with small potatoes like that? It doesn't really matter. It's not relevant. So as long as one is under the control of the material modes, which is pretty much everyone in the material world, he desires so many things and makes so many plans for material sense enjoyment. But as soon as the Lord is perceived in the heart, all material desires vanish. Oh, when would that day will be mine? Really. When the mind is completely free from material desire, the devotee can think of the Lord constantly. In this way, he becomes completely dependent upon the lotus feet of the Lord. And then Prabhupada quotes Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's 5th verse of the Shikshashtaka. My dear Lord, I am your eternal servant, but somehow or other, that's Lord Chaitanya is being kind of liberal there, doesn't accuse the living entity of being stupid, choosing the wrong thing, somehow or other. I've fallen into this ocean of the material world. Kindly pick me up and fix me as a speck of dust at your lotus feet. So we are basically dropped into the ocean of the material world, and there is no visible shore, there is no boat, there is no lifesaver, there is nothing. So the only way to get out is to take shelter of the Lord. And how do we do this in this age and in any age? Is by chanting the holy name, by taking shelter of Krishna as his holy name, the easiest and only viable method to achieve Krishna's grace and the association of devotees and the association of Guru and Sadhu, by chanting Krishna's name. Then Prabhupada quotes Srila Narottam Das Thakur. My dear Lord, you're now present with the daughter of Vrishabhanu, Srimati Radharani. Now both of you, please be merciful upon me. Don't kick me away because I have no shelter other than you. Just like Krishna is never alone, Radharani is never alone. They're always together. And they will save us from this, the mire of this world, just by applying for it. It's not like trying to get into Harvard, that out of 1,000 applicants, maybe 30 make it. This Krishna consciousness is a lot more generous. If you apply, you will get in. All you have to do is apply, and apply yourself. In this way, the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes dependent on his devotee. This is quite astonishing, that the Supreme Person, the O, Supreme Person, omniscient, omnipotent, and omnibenevolent, becomes dependent on a tiny jiva, just because of the bind of love. The Lord is invincible, yet he is conquered by his pure devotee. He enjoys being dependent on his devotee, just as Krishna enjoyed being dependent on the mercy of Mother Yashoda. There are some quotes about Krishna being the property of the devotees. For example, in the second canto, there is a purport, 2.3.23, where Srila Prabhupada is speaking. The verse itself says, Lord Sri Krishna is the property of his pure unconditional devotees. And as such, only the devotees can deliver Krishna to another devotee. Krishna is never obtainable directly. And then in the purport, Prabhupada speaks about Maharaj Rahugana inquiring from Jadabharata how he attained such a liberated stage. And in that purport, Prabhupada mentions Lord Sri Krishna is a property of his pure unconditional devotee. And as such, only the devotees can deliver Krishna to another devotee. Krishna is never obtainable directly. Lord Chaitanya therefore designated himself as Gopi Bhartu Pada Kamalaya or Dasa Dasan Das, the most obedient servant of the servants of the Lord who maintained the Gopi dances of Vrindavan. So a pure devotee never approaches the Lord directly, but tries to please a servant of the Lord's servants. Thus the Lord becomes pleased, and only then can the devotee relish a taste of the tulsi leaves stuck to his lotus feet. In the seventh canto, in the verses 7, 9, 42, one must become the dog of a Vaishnava, a pure devotee, for a pure devotee can deliver Krishna without difficulty. Krishna said, Tomara Krishna dite para. Krishna is the property of his pure devotee. And if we take shelter of a pure devotee, he can deliver Krishna very easily. So in the purport also Prabhupada says, first talks about Bhaktivinoda's song, Tumitata Kura Tomara Kukura, Tomara Kukura, I'm your dog. Baliya Janahari, Janahamore. O my Lord, O Vaishnava, please consider me your dog. One must become the dog of a Vaishnava, a pure devotee, for a pure devotee can deliver Krishna without difficulty. Krishna said, Tomara, Krishna dite para. Krishna is the property of his pure devotee. Prabhupada gave a lecture in Vrindavan, November 30th of 1976, where he quotes the same song and also says, Vaishnava Thakura, Krishna is your property. If you like, you can give. So Vaishnava Thakura, Krishna is your property. There's also Chaitanya Charitamrita lecture in New York City in July 11, 1976. I'm seeking after Krishna. Vaishnava Thakura, my spiritual master. So Krishna is your property. Krishna is not independent. He's the property of a devotee. Even Prabhupada speaking of the Brahma Samhita lecture in 1971 in New York City. Krishna is yours by your devotional service. You have made Krishna your property, so you can deliver Krishna to me. Therefore, I want to follow you as faithfully as a dog. And the part of this lecture, Prabhupada said, by your devotional service, you have made Krishna your property. And also there is an initiation lecture where in July of 1971 in New York, where Prabhupada said, Krishna is available only to his devotees. Krishna is the property of his devotee. So in the lecture, Prabhupada said, Avachintya means beyond our conception, even though you're able to go in high speed and for so many years, still Krishna remains Avachintya Tattva. Nobody can find out where Krishna's abode, Goloka Vrindavan, is. Therefore, the Mayavadis, in desperate frustration, they say that Krishna is impersonal because they want to approach Krishna by mundane activities, by mental exercise, mental gymnastics. Krishna is not available in that way. Krishna is available only to his devotees. Krishna is the property of his devotees. So we can see here that there is very little hope, I would say no hope, to approach Krishna without approaching Krishna's devotees. In the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, 11-47, Prabhupada, actually the servants of Prabhupada, translate this, the 11th canto. The verse says, Acharyam eva haraye pujam ya shadaye yehate natad bhakteshu chanyesu na bhakta prakritas mrita. A devotee who faithfully engages in the worship of the deity in the temple, but does not behave properly towards other devotees or people in general, is called a prakrita bhakta, a materialistic devotee, and is considered to be in the lowest position. So Krishna has no interest in someone who is just throwing his hands and offering things to the deity, but doesn't see the devotees. So the goal is attaining Krishna, but you cannot displace or think that you can get to Krishna without associating properly with devotees, with love and enthusiasm. And of course, he requires the things that Rupa Goswami described in the first verse of Upadeshamrita: patience, enthusiasm, and determination. You need them for every endeavor, whether material or spiritual. And in the case of living in a community of devotees, you always need to keep it present that these people, however quirky and different they may appear to be, they're Krishna's property, and Krishna is their property. Therefore, if you want Krishna, you have to learn to live with them in a properly harmonious way. At the end of the purport for the verse of today's verse, Prabhupada is speaking about Krishna being the property of Mother Yasoda. It is said that the prayers of the personified Vedas are not as interesting to Krishna as the rebukes of Mother Yasoda. So thinking of himself, speaking about Krishna, dependent on the devotee, gives the Supreme Lord great enjoyment. Sometimes a king may engage a joker, a jester, and in the process of joking, the king is sometimes insulted. The king, however, enjoys these activities. There is, Prabhupada sometimes will tell stories of Gopal Ban, jester to the king, and the king was very strict. Can't remember the king's name, Krishna something. Yeah. Maybe some of you remember. And like Gopal Ban would say to the king, do you know what the difference between you and between me and an ass is? And the king would say no. And then Gopal Ban will measure the distance between him and the king and said about 6 feet. So the king will enjoy this kind of bantering because it's authorized. But if one of his ministers try to joke with the king, probably will not have the same result. So Krishna is enjoying, it's not that Krishna is a witness, mute witness of the living entity's activities, and it's our lives are so interesting that Krishna is totally fascinated, and he doesn't have a life. He has a big board with a lot of little TV screens where he's watching every living entity to see what they're up to. This is not like the Instagram and Twitter and YouTube and all these things where everybody's a narcissist and is constantly enforcing and reinforcing the concept that I am the center. I am the center, taking pictures of myself, buying selfie sticks so you have an opportunity to watch yourself doing things. Krishna is not really interested in any of that. Krishna is only interested in love. So as long as we can cultivate love for Krishna, Krishna will have interest in us. As Prabhupada said, if you think of Krishna 24 hours a day, he will think of you 26 hours a day. And if you think of yourself, Krishna will think of himself. I think it's a very fair deal. So we should remember that. So at the end of the purport, Prabhupada says, everyone worships the Supreme Lord with great reverence. Therefore, the Lord sometimes wants to enjoy the chastisement of his devotees. In this way, the relationship eternally existing between the Lord and his devotees is fixed, just like a sky overhead. I have that experience when we were living in Santa Barbara, California. We have different devotees, sannyasis, visiting us. And it was a very casual atmosphere where there was literally no awe and reverence. And you would think, oh, but that's improper. No, actually, they enjoyed it a lot, because someone who's traveling around the world and being worshipped and ask questions and share the miseries of people's lives and having to solve so many problems and garlands and maha and et cetera, will enjoy actually being bantered with and ignored and treated like a regular person. So why is that tendency there? It's in Krishna, because it's in Krishna too. Krishna is one of the boys. Well, he happens to be the supreme being, so it's kind of hard to fathom, but he enjoys the being treated like a regular person, just like a king doesn't want to be treated like a king when he gets home. All right, 7:46. I think we have squeezed enough out of this diatribe, soliloquy. So if you, Prabhus, have anything to contribute, please feel free to do so now.
I'll jump in.
Of course.
Where to begin? I want to thank you for a very nice class. I particularly appreciate all of the references. Makes everything very authoritative. Very, very nice to hear. I want to call everyone's attention to the fact that we have a very special guest amongst us this morning. There is a very nice devotee, Subhuti Krishna. He is here under the name Subodh Sangar. He is a stalwart preacher, a wonderful preacher of Krishna consciousness, and has a very glorious history of preaching. And he also happens to be my son, Godra Magor's father-in-law. Regrettably, however, a couple of days ago, he suffered a heart attack and hospitalized. In spite of this, he is here with us this morning, and I'd like to request the prayers of the assembled devotees for his he's rendered a great deal of very valuable service, and we'd like to see that trend continue for some time to come. So, Subhuti Krishna Prabhu, very nice devotee, Hare Krishna. And with regards to today's verse, let's see, we have about 11 minutes. I don't want to hog all the time, but let's see what's quick. Real quick, This Srila Prabhupada makes reference to this one Bengali song, happens to be one that he is particularly fond of. And there are a lot of songs that he's very fond of, and this one he frequently makes reference to. There are a number of recordings. Hari Hari Bifale, it's Ishta Deve, Vigapti, Narottam Das Thakur. It comes from Prarthana. It's one of the songs of Prarthana, and I think this morning I came across 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4 different recordings of Srila Prabhupada singing this song. And wonderful, heartfelt prayer to Krishna. I could try to share a translation and purport for that verse, but Srila Prabhupada, in the beginning of his purport, he makes reference to Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, second chapter, text 17, which we sometimes chant prior to the recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srinivatam Svakata Krishna, Punya Shravana Kirtana, Pradyanta Sto Yabadrani Vihanoti Suhrit Satam. It's a wonderful verse, and Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So Srila Prabhupada is quoting this verse because talking about this cleansing of material desires, as today is describing being completely cleansed of all material desires. The devotees are freed from all mental contamination. And in that condition, they can think of the Lord constantly. So verse which he has quoted is directing us towards one of the means by which we achieve that purification, by hearing, specifically the personality of Godhead. Krishna himself purifies the heart of the devotee. There's a wonderful purport here, which is worth hearing again, but I think we have the time for that. But moving on to the second verse, and that was text 17 of the second chapter of the first canto. The verse immediately following that, we also repeat prior to Bhagavatam class, sometimes at least. Nasta Praj for Bhadreshu, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, Bhagavat Yutama Shloke, Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. So 2 effects here, that by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, these inauspicious elements, the contamination in the heart is almost completely destroyed, and simultaneously the personality of Godhead is established as an irrevocable fact, he becomes firmly, our realization of his presence in our heart becomes firmly established. The purport is once again wonderful. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains the two Bhagavatas, that there is the book Bhagavata and the person Bhagavata. And both of them, or he says either of them can be good enough to eliminate the obstacles on the path of devotional service. They are both competent to purify the heart. And that practically they are non-different from one another. We have roughly 5 minutes. I will read quickly through some of this because it's just really worthwhile to hear. He says, here is the remedy for eliminating all inauspicious things within the heart, which are considered to be obstacles in the path of self-realization. The remedy is the association of the Bhagavatas. There are two types of Bhagavatas, namely the book Bhagavata and the devotee Bhagavata. Both the Bhagavatas are competent remedies, and both of them, or either of them, can be good enough to eliminate the obstacles. A devotee Bhagavata is as good as the book Bhagavata because the devotee Bhagavata leads his life in terms of the book Bhagavata. And the book Bhagavata is full of information about the personality of Godhead and his pure devotees, who are also Bhagavatas. Bhagavat, book, and person are identical. The devotee Bhagavata is a direct representative of Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. So by pleasing the devotee Bhagavata, one can receive the benefit of the book Bhagavata. Human reason fails to understand how by serving the devotee Bhagavata or the book Bhagavata, one gets gradual promotion on the path of devotion. But actually, these are facts explained by Srila Narada Dev, who happened to be a maidservant's son in his previous life. The maidservant was engaged in menial service of the sages, and thus he also came in contact with them. And simply by associating with them and accepting the remnants of foodstuff left by the sages, the son of the maidservant got the chance to become the great devotee and personality, Srila Narada Dev. These are the miraculous effects of the association of. And to understand these effects practically, it should be noted that by such sincere association of the Bhagavatas, one is sure to receive transcendental knowledge very easily, with the result that he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. The more progress is made in devotional service under the guidance of the Bhagavatas, the more one becomes fixed in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The messages of the book Bhagavata, therefore, have to be received from the devotee Bhagavata, and the combination of these two Bhagavatas will help the neophyte devotee to make progress on and on. So we have been blessed by Srila Prabhupada to have both the benefit of the book Bhagavata and the person Bhagavata actually combined together in a single publication. We have the book Bhagavata, and Srila Prabhupada has provided his own association. The person Bhagavata is present by his purports, illuminating the text of Srimad Bhagavatam. So it's an ideal combination. By reading Srimad Bhagavatam, and Srimad Bhagavatam, we understand, should be read in the association of devotees. And we have and so Srila Prabhupada established the process of regular classes, morning and evening. We come together to jointly hear these messages, but we get to hear also Srila Prabhupada's own commentary on the text of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we have the association of the person Bhagavat and the book Bhagavat simultaneously. Very wonderful and powerful combination, immensely purifying. Sometimes devotees ask questions about, how do I rid myself of this or that type of contamination I have this or that problem, some contaminant in my heart. How do I eliminate this? So here is the answer. Answer is being given by Srimad Bhagavatam itself, and it's being given by Srila Prabhupada as well. We have two processes here. I've been Srila Prabhupada's purport to 43120. We have the process of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, and also the process of hearing the holy names of the Lord. Chaito Darpana Marjanam, right? That chanting of the holy names cleanses the heart of all the contamination. So that's our process. We chant Hare Krishna, we hear Srimad Bhagavatam. The result is guaranteed. It's just a matter of time. Only issue is that we have to avoid offenses. Offenses will spoil that effect. But if we can remain inoffensive in our hearing and chanting, then the result comes very, very quickly. So we've reached 8 o'clock.
Thank you, Prabhu. Much appreciated for your insight. And Prabhupada actually was very fond of the song Hari Hari Vipale. Yamuna actually asked Prabhupada if he had a favorite song, and he said yes, Hari Hari Vipale. Okay, thank you, devotees. Now it's time to greet our Lord, Sri Sri Radha Damodar. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Sri Sri Radha Damodar, Lalita Vishaka, Srini Tagore, all glories to Srimad Bhagavatam. Hari Hari Bo.